Okay, everybody, this is Wednesday at 7 o'clock, so you know what that means, as it has for many years now. It's time for the progress report. I have been happy to host this with my good friend Mike Farley. Mike is not here because we are under new safety requirements here at MCTV. We're very glad to be back in the studio, and I have a fine guest with me, but because now the protocol calls for no more than 2 people to be in the studio, along with a number of other really very practical and necessary but kind of annoying changes to the usual routine. I expect Mike will be calling in and joining us by phone for the first segment, and we will probably take a break after that and come back with the rest of the show. I wanted to, and I have to compliment my good friend Mike Farley for the suggestion that we reach out to somebody to represent the grocery world here in New Hampshire, and I can't think of a better person than John Dumas, who is and has been for 45 years. You told me.
45 years.
And
yeah.
you're so young. I can't believe it.
Used to be young.
45 years, the executive director of the association, and we do have Mike with us. I'm going to put him right on with us now. Hey, Mike, you there? Mike, you there?
Yeah.
Whoops.
There we go.
Oops, I just cut. Mike, it just cut you off. That was entirely my fault. Please call back. We're anxious to have you join us. I thought maybe I had to press the button twice, and I shouldn't have done that. In any event, we are very pleased to welcome John with us. I've known John for many years. We worked on at least one project around energy efficiency and the things in commercial sector quite a while ago. Here it is. Okay. Now you there, Mike?
I'm back, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great to hear you. I wish you were here with us, but I've been explaining why you're not.
Well, there's a lot of things that have been part of my routine that I'm not doing anymore, so at least I'm glad you'll have me. I'm only going to stick around for the first part of the show so that if there's anyone that wants to call in, and I'm hoping that we get a lot of callers on the show, they'll be able to take part in the conversation.
Exactly, and that's fine. We appreciate that, too. And that reminds me, folks, we do welcome callers, and if you want to call in for the part of the show when Mike will be leaving us, which will be after our first segment ends at about 20 minutes after the hour, the number is 640-3091, and we really enjoy our callers. And I had to say, Mike, I was going to credit you with my reaching out to our guest for tonight, John Dumas. And John, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this business, and what you're doing in life. And
Well, I think the grocery business has been in my blood for a long time. It goes back to my grandfather, had a grocery store, immigrant from Poland on my mother's side, and landed in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Huh.
And didn't know what he was going to be doing, and found there was a grocery store nearby, and decided to start working there, and eventually owned that store.
Yeah.
Started raising a family, and very shortly they had another grocery store across the street from it, and they bought that one too.
Uh-huh.
And so it was very successful, except they didn't want to bring up their children in a large city like Lowell, and they had some relatives in Franklin, New Hampshire. So they moved up to Franklin, New Hampshire, and opened a grocery store in the Polish section of town because there was no other grocery store for their foods that they were looking for. And so then you advance forward all the way, and on my father's side, his older brother decided to open a grocery store in Laconia, where we were living at the time, and opened Dumas IGA in Laconia. That failed after he passed away, and so we all migrated over to Franklin and worked in that store until my grandfather retired. And when he did, my family took it over from that. I was in there about 1960 or so, doing the small things around there, and have been there ever since until 74. And then in 74, things changed with the parking and everything required in town, and so we lost a lot of our trade. And I went back to my association, New Hampshire Grocers Association, and talked to them about it, and they said they're looking for an assistant. So I worked for 10 years with John Dixon, who was the executive director at the time. And when he decided to retire, I applied for the position, and lucky enough to get it. And so I've been there ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. John
Dumas doesn't sound like a Polish name.
No, that's a French name.
Yeah.
It's Canadian French. It's Dumais.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my father's side of the family.
Okay.
My grandfather there immigrated from Canada and ended up in Somersworth and then moved to Laconia to grow his family up. And so that's where I was born, in Laconia.
I see.
For a few years. So,
I got a lot of things I want to get into, and I'm sure Mike does too. But maybe I can just ask you.
I do. I've got a list. I wanted to.
Why don't,
about,
since I'm going to be here after you.
Stores are a focus these days.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Mike? Because I'm going to be able to have John with me after you decide to clear the lines for what we hope may be other calls. So why don't I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, Mike,
sure,
let's go.
I'd be happy to take the ball and run with it. Basically, John, I kind of had three topics that I think are emerging here with the new importance of grocery stores in the way we're living now. One being shortages, and maybe Bob, as the show goes on, you can tease these out a little bit.
Yep.
The other being the price hikes that are going on now because of those shortages, perhaps, and the other one being employee safety. Just to give you a little bit of background, my wife has been working. She took a job with the Mooless Market Basket back in high school, and just continued to keep on shifts. And so she still works part time at the Market Basket in downtown Manchester.
Oh, great!
And it's a little bit stressful. She's out there in the public. There's a lot of people. They're doing the best they can. Why don't I lead off with that? Could you talk a little bit about what grocery stores are doing throughout New Hampshire to keep their employees and their customers safe?
Sure. Well, they have a long history of trying to have clean stores and sanitary stores, primarily because we're dealing with fresh foods, and we want to make sure that what we are selling are really safe for the consumer to consume and purchase. And so they have had a lot of protocol over the years. They've been licensed by the state of New Hampshire Department of Health, following the FDA guidelines, which is the national standard for food stores across the country to be involved with. And they keep evolving every year and getting more specific in what they do. And so in that whole period of time, we've had a pretty good record going forward, but certainly this is something that's very unusual. We haven't had a pandemic of this magnitude that I can remember in many years. And if you want to go back to the 1800s or something, I guess we had one back then too. But
1918
that was it.
Big one, yeah. The so-called Spanish flu.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've been learning ever since how to protect ourselves from all of that. And it was a quick turnaround, something that we got involved with quite at the very beginning with it. We solicited our other state associations around the country, found the best practices, developed the guidelines of those for not only the retailers and the employees of the store, but also for the consumers who want to know how they can have safe food, because that's the whole thing, is we need to have safe food supply from the grower, the farmer, or the cattleman, all the way through the processing, the whole chain processing of it, manufacturing of products out of it, distributing those products to wholesalers across country, getting them to grocery stores. And we know that the supply is there. We know that there's safe food there. But by the time it gets from there going home to the consumer, that's where they're not always aware of what temperature they need to keep controls on for those products. So our whole goal is trying to keep everybody safe and have a good, healthy food supply.
Sure, and I'm sure consumer confidence is a huge part of just your entire industry.
Absolutely. It's something that we've worked on for years, and they're doing that even more so now to do that. And you mentioned earlier about the employees. I'll tell you, I've seen this whole operation for 50 years happening of how they've been doing it, and it's very evident that entry level for a lot of people are being the grocery store, so the pay isn't always the best it could be. But they're taking on the responsibility. They're staying in the stores longer hours. They're helping to clean down the facilities, especially the checkout areas. Are very important that we keep those clean. they're protected. We put up mask shields in front of the cashier for that purpose. They're usually monitored, or will be soon be monitoring all of them as they enter to see if they're sick in the morning, take their temperature, or ask them if they're taking their temperature at home. And if they have any kind of illness, is to go back home.
That's not being done yet, but
it is being done in many cases.
In many cases.
The problem is that the thermometers are not available. There's two types. There's one where you'd touch your child on the forehead with one. We don't want to really do that. That's another point of contamination. So the other one is an infrared thermometer, where you stand back about 3 feet from the person and you target them, and it can tell you what their temperature is.
Mm-hmm. I was very surprised the other day. Actually, Monday, I wandered into the law firm where I've practiced here many years. I'm retired now, but I still go in, and the first thing that happened to me was the office manager came out with a thermometer to take my temperature, asked me 5 questions about whether I'd been, had any symptoms, and then keeping a log of it.
Right.
And we're deemed an essential business. Obviously, grocery stores are definitely an essential business. And you're not now yet required to do that same level of examination of the people that come into the store?
We don't do that for a number of reasons. Primarily that there are some people who have a health condition that they don't allow that to happen. We do that in an honor system. We're asking them, did you take your temperature at home? They say yes. Are you sick? Have you had any symptoms at all? No, I did not. Then I want to document that, put that in place so that we have that same thing that you're doing there. So it's all done on a voluntary basis. But I got to tell you that we're finding more and more people, once they understand how serious this is and what we're trying to do to help them, that they're willing to work with us rather than oppose what we're doing.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's getting
Sure,
better.
I got to tell you, I'd be much more likely to walk into a grocery store where they're doing that than one where they're not.
Exactly. Yeah. And,
and just if I can throw my 2 cents in, I work in the construction business, and the Boston construction market is scheduled to start opening up next week, and we just started having our safety meetings. We're doing the same thing, taking temperatures when people come in. Those thermometers are difficult to come by, but they're becoming more and more available, and it's really it adds to a level of comfort to the people that have to come out and work and get the economy going again. And without that, I think you have a lot of people that are, their nerves are on edge, and they're really not that effective.
Right. And you're absolutely right. I mean, for a long time, we were getting criticized for not having masks on all the employees, and that's because they weren't available. At one point, we did try and work out to try and get them. We got 100,000 masks. We were ready to start distributing them, and the state was able to get a larger quantity out there, and they're now distributing them free of charge. So there's less and less need for that, but there's some who have a need not necessarily for the mask, because that's kind of suffocating in some respects going forward. So they have these plastic shields. Mm-hmm. You could do that as an alternative. Yep. We do have the sneeze guards up.
Are they really an alternative? Aren't they both?
They should be both, but it's better than nothing at all.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're trying to stop the wearer of those products are looking to stop contaminating someone else if they were sick.
Right.
If they get sick later on.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well,
can I before my time runs out, can I talk a little bit about the shortages that have really been in the news? I think a lot of that might be due to some people it's kind of self-perpetuating, people hoarding. But we've seen it in dry goods. We're seeing it in the paper towels and the toilet paper and that stuff. We're seeing it in the disinfectants. The Lysol sprays, the Clorox bleach, that kind of thing. Yep. And now we're starting to see it in meat and other food products, while at the same time, with regard to the food products, those products that were destined to go into the restaurant supply chain are being dumped and euthanized. And it seems like we have a major disconnect in this country, that we're letting food rot on one side, but we have empty shelves on the other. Could you comment a little on that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. First of all, shortages is nothing new. They go back all through almost every decade. There's a shortage that comes up, and the problem is that a lot of times it's just the hype of it. It sort of you don't know what to do with it, so you try and mitigate that any way you can.
The classic run on the bank in the old westerns.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I go back again to the 70s was the time when there was certainly a lot of changes that were happening with that, and it became a situation where people were starting to hoard toilet paper back then, and it just happens again. And so you're trying to get some kind of feeling like you have some control over the situation when it's getting out of control.
Yeah.
But the fact is that our food industry today is so sophisticated that every link in that chain, I mentioned the distribution system from the farmer to the retailer, every one of those has a backup inventory on hand.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of food out there. The problem is that when there's a disruption in that system, then it sort of backs all the way through the system and can get really back down in not having the inventory available.
Yeah. So the original thing was, as I think you mentioned, there was a big, lots of people were stockpiling, particularly paper products, paper towels, toilet paper, even coffee filters, I think at one time. Is that pretty much over now? Are people convinced that they're not going to run out of toilet paper in the next week if they don't buy
I think so.
a year's supply?
Well, the thing is that you mentioned earlier that you have one industry has not been operating, the restaurant industry and the grocery stores have. You have to understand that if you go to use a restroom facility in a commercial environment, it's usually a commercial toilet paper holder. It's a large roll on a dispenser to do that. That comes from one manufacturer that's all they do is they do commercial grade toilet paper and paper towels. Then the retail chain has another whole segment doing theirs. So what happens is that once the restaurant industry or the all retail except grocery stores closed down, people were staying at home. So now the facilities they would use sometimes during the day at work, they weren't there anymore. There's an excess of that. Then there's nothing.
I realized that. That's interesting. And the commercial thing is based on one U.S. supplier?
No. This is like it's split in half. It's like half and half.
Okay.
And so that's the problem is that now that you're home, you're using more of those products at home. And so there's a natural desire. You need to have more of that.
Yeah.
The problem is the industry can't change the commercial manufacturer quickly enough to start operating for the retail trade. And as you can see, we're already getting better with it already. If they were to say, we're going to stop the whole process and go over this one, they have different manufacturing. They'd have to retool all the machinery for it. They have different distribution system, different trucking firms to get it across country to different wholesalers who are doing mainly the commercial end of it versus the retail end of it. And now to switch them back, it would be even more expensive to do that. So that's why the worst thing that can happen is that someone starts to create a problem out there and has a scare tactic, and everyone says, I need to take care of that. And the classic example of that is back in the 70s again. There were two Wisconsin representatives who made a joke about, boy, the next thing we're going to be potentially running out of toilet paper.
Was this on the Johnny Carson show?
Well, he picked it up on the show.
He picked it up, and that made it national.
He did, because what he did is he forgot to say potential.
Yeah.
And he just said, we're going to have a shortage of paper here. And the next day, it was just everywhere was pulling on it.
I remember that.
So that's the problem that happens is that the food supply, it's like the meat. The meat is the other one that Mike's mentioned. With the meat supply, the same things are happening again, where they're saying, oh, we're going to have a shortage of meat now from this going on, because they are not the farmers and the processors aren't using their commercial end of it for the restaurants.
Yeah.
And they can't necessarily bring that over to the retail side fast enough. Now, we've seen some innovative people, some grocery stores who are saying to their restaurant partners, how about bringing your product into my grocery store, and we'll sell your product for you.
Yeah. And
so that's been working out pretty good. But we're getting back to normal now. It's coming back.
That's very interesting, John, because I see these stories about the meat processing plants being hot spots for the virus hitting, and many of the workers are testing positive, and some real illnesses popping up, and they're shutting them down. You hear these big companies like.
Well, that's another problem again.
That's another problem. Yeah.
So
I was thinking the only problem was just that maybe the supplies being limited because we aren't able to process this meat into
that's true.
Suitable for retail.
So what had happened about 5 years ago, some of the larger meat processing plants bought up a lot of others, and they became super large size ones they could do mass production, more of it.
Right.
And so right now, the federal government is saying there's about 3,000 meat processing plants across the country. But in fact, for these large ones they're doing 80% of the business, they're the ones that are being affected by this more than the small independent ones.
And there's not 3,000 of them. There's probably just a very few
That's
of
right,
them at
very
that
few
scale,
of them.
right?
But they're doing the volume.
Yeah.
And so what happens when you see that happening is that means that there is going to be some disruption in that system, because once you're tested for it, they shut you down for 14 days to see if anyone else is contaminated with it, and if they can check it all out. Meantime, we're cleaning the plant and everything. Well, those 14 days is just a long time, because today with everything is just-in-time deliveries to a grocery store, you're finding that what's happening is you got 14 days of no deliveries.
Yeah.
Now that it's getting back and those plants are coming online, they're starting to process the meat. They need time to get it on transportation across country. 14 days is not going to do that. It's going to be closer to 30 days to 45 days.
Yeah. So at this point, are some of the stores you represent having to limit the amount of meat that customers can buy?
They are. They try not to. They rather would not have to do that. But when they see that it's happening too much, they do have to put up signs to do that. And that's just so it's fair for the other consumer coming after them to have a chance to do that.
And are there any other general categories of product that are subject to this limitation today?
Again, it's a moving target, depending on when the hoarding stops and the supply catches up to it. We know that over Easter, eggs was a substantial item. There was only 1 dozen eggs to a customer for Easter.
Yeah.
And that just meant that everybody was running on that because it's a protein product.
Yeah.
You see it now with some poultry is in there because of the meat cutting on that side of it as well. It's getting back to normal. I mean, I think that all the way through we're going to see it get better. But they have to remember next time they...
Go ahead, Mike.
That's some really great analysis. I appreciate the answer, John. I'm just going to cut in. I've monopolized the phone, guys. John, thanks for coming on. I'm going to keep watching, and I hope folks call in. Bob, great guest, great show so far. Keep it up, and we'll talk to you.
Your idea, Mike.
He's a good man. He's a good man. Mike, I hope to see you sometime.
I would look forward to that. Great conversation so far. Let's continue it sometime in the future.
All right, we'll do it.
Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Brendan, if this is okay with you, I think we'll take a quick break and come right back. Okay, I can barely hear you. Hi, everybody. This is the Progress Report, and you know me. I'm Bob Backus. I've been here doing this for many years. We just said goodbye to Mike Farley, who could not be here with us because the safety requirements of using the studio now require that we have only 2 people here at a time, and I have a fine guest in John Dumas, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Retail Grocers Association. And we're all learning really to appreciate our grocery stores more than ever. We're not eating out, not much at least, and then by takeout only. So a lot more people are eating at home. And the major thing for many people when they want to get out of their house and cabin fever is setting in is to go to the grocery store or maybe the pharmacy. But particularly the grocery store. We all got to eat, and we're just learning interesting things about how the retail grocers here in New Hampshire are addressing these problems, trying to assure the safety of their customers and their employees. And that's what we've been talking about. In regard to that, John, safety, how many people working in your member stores have tested positive, and has anybody had to be hospitalized that you know of?
As far as I know, there have not been many indications of that. There's some that have the symptoms but have not really come down with it to a great degree.
Yeah.
I think that we had a few out there that were diagnosed with it. They're getting treated. They're okay, but they're not going back to the store. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to trace it back. The state has done a tremendous job on 2 levels. First of all, the governor has done a great job of understanding the industry and understanding what our needs are, what we want to do. We want to accommodate everybody, but we don't want to be the ones policing them to do that. We've found that I think there was another state there where an employee did tried to talk to a customer saying you have to wear a mask in the store, and the fellow pulled out a gun and shot him. And that's not something we don't want to do. We want to protect our people as much as we can. So hopefully we're asking everyone to work with us, not against us, on what we're doing. We're doing the best we can in many cases.
On the other side of the coin, has there been a problem for some of your stores that some of the employees, because of the fear of this contamination and the fact that they're going to be dealing with a significant part of the public on a daily basis, have decided that they don't want to be in that risk and have stepped away from their jobs?
That's very much the case. I know that in some stores, not all of them, but in some of them, a third of their total employment force has decided to stay home and not participate in the program, and that we thought was going to be just something that they'd get over that after a period of time, but now we have a stimulus check coming from the federal government where they're getting an extra $600 a week into the paycheck. It's not giving them much incentive to come back to do that.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's those who are coming back. The ones who are in the stores today are the true heroes of this, where they're willing to do that because they understand they have a part to play in getting the food out to the consumers.
I certainly agree with that, and I think we all have come to appreciate, some of the people who are not the top wage earners in our society.
Exactly.
Are exactly as important as anybody who's making many multiples of the wages these folks are making. And so that really, when we talk about we're all in this together, that's a good example of where many of us do believe that, and your employees that stock these shelves.
Oh.
The checkout process. Now I think probably every checkout counter has a plexiglass barrier between the employee and the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably most of the employees are also wearing masks, are they not? I don't know, are they all now being asked to wear masks?
They're being asked to. Again, some of them
But it's still voluntary.
It is voluntary, yeah.
Yeah.
But
should it be mandatory?
Well, not in every case, because, again, you don't want to again, these employees are working hard. They're trying to do the best thing they can do. As long as they're able to get the mask, which hasn't been a problem up until recently, there are a few that are going to say, I have an allergy to a mask. I feel suffocating. We heard of one situation where a supplier was going in the store to make a display up, and so he was moving cases around, making a display in the store, and he came out and he felt kind of dizzy and actually became unconscious because he lost oxygen. Mm-hmm. It is somewhat suffocating in the process in some cases. For the normal cashier or bagger, it's not so much of an issue with that they can use that. But then again, there's others who can't use that kind of mask. So the face shield is the second best thing to do. Those are available as well. And so we've asked them, management is everywhere is asking them, please try and use the mask. It makes everyone feel a little safer. But the fact is that more importantly, we're asking the consumer to wear the mask because it's a larger population. It's not as regulated as the store management population is. And so we want to make sure that they're trying to protect our employees as much as possible. On the store side, they're asking them when they come in the morning to check have they been ill. As I said, they need to wash their hands about every hour during the day. At the checkout stand, every so often when they have an opportunity, they want to wipe down the conveyor belt, the touch screens for the customers and their own as well on a regular basis throughout the day. And that's all to make sure that we're trying to keep it as clean as possible. Mm-hmm. That adds to the health and sanitation issues that we've done all along to follow with the health rules.
I think pretty much all your stores now offer a self-checkout option for customers, don't they?
That's the best one.
Yeah. Is there any thought just moving to that being the way everybody should get pay their bill when they get
again, the technology's coming. It's more expensive, and there's a lot of people who don't want to do that. Again, we want to give the customer what they want.
We have another caller.
Oh, great.
Hello, Carol. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
It's Carol. I hate to bother you, but I'm the shopper in the family.
I know this, Carol.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to observe that the employees at the stores seem to be a lot better prepared to deal with this than the customers do. They are unfailingly courteous and helpful, And if they have protective equipment, they are wearing it. They keep their distance if you ask them a question. But some of the customers are absolutely awful. If aisles are marked one way, they go the wrong way. They crowd each other. They're I don't know. It seems to me a mess. And I take some comfort in reading recently that it's actually safer to go in groceries than a lot of other businesses. But I'm concerned that customers are generally not well educated about what they should be doing. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, have you got a thought about what the grocery stores or their association should maybe do to help customers understand the risks and behave better?
Well, unless you can stop them at the door and make them sign a pledge to behave, I don't know. General education, I guess.
Yeah, that's very true, and we're doing that. There's the CDC guidelines, the federal guidelines are coming out. We brought out some guidelines through our association for the stores to understand what to talk about to the customers and how to handle the employees and keep them prepared for going forward. There's signage up. Certainly, all the news media keeps reminding everyone to wash their hands and to be courteous. And that's one thing that we really are trying to do is that, yes, we know as an industry that we're relying on those people to come back to our store. And so we want to be as courteous and be efficient to them, as safe to them as possible. We want them to get in and out of the store as fast as they can with the product they want. But a lot of times
from what I'm reading, that's important.
Yep.
Have a list, go through the store, quickly get what you need, and then be ready to move on.
Exactly. Another aspect of that is that we're asking families not to come to the store. I know that's very different for us. At one time, we said this is a family time to be together, going down the aisle with the carts and have all the babies and everyone with it. But now that's not very good. First of all, it's creating more congestion in the store, and where we're limiting the congestion already, that's not fair. It's taking some spaces away from other customers who could be there. Plus, you're endangering a pregnant mother, an autoimmune senior citizen coming in, or children, and we don't want any of those to be affected. So you're right, Carol. The ideal thing would be that you designate one healthy person in the family to do the shopping. You get a shopping list ahead of time. If you can visualize the store layout, identify where the frozen foods are, where the produce is in the store, so you have only one time to go through the store. You're not going back and forth trying to find everything.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, don't look at all the extra things that you could find in the store. That's my problem. I go to the store, I could spend 3 hours in the store.
Right there.
And my wife is not too crazy about that, but
I have the same
I still do that.
thing.
But the idea is to go in with the shopping list, take care of your list, go through the store, come to the checkout line, stand 6 feet apart from everybody else, and when your time comes, we'll get you through that line as fast as possible and out of the store.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks for calling, Carol. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Let's see. I was asking you about the checkout. You responded to that. Let me see. What else did I want to talk to you about here? Let's see. Is this really a boom time for the grocery stores? I mean, we know the economy's in terrible shape. The job losses are staggering.
Right.
But with the people not eating out so much, and everybody has to eat. Are these good times for the grocery?
I think the only positive thing I can see out of this is that for a long time, you and I, when we were growing up, you had 3 meals a day at home. Your mother stayed home and made meals.
That's true.
And everybody sat around the table, and you got to know the family, and it was a family unit. And gradually over time, recent years, with technology happening, and everybody wanted to use their iPads or their cell phones, and they wanted to be dispersed, and they wanted snack foods. Everything was a quick meal type of thing. And so a couple of years ago, one of our national trade associations, the Food Marketing Institute, came out with a family meal month in September, and encourage everyone to try and take at least one meal a week with the whole family sitting around the table. Well, that was successful in its own right, but now that's become the norm again. And we're seeing that, and there's more of a family unit than there has been before. Everyone is trying to work better together. The parents understand what the children are doing, and it's really has been a plus to do that. But at the same time, it's been a very tedious situation. First of all, a lot of these retailers, as I mentioned, aren't familiar with the pandemic issues of it and how we have to handle this, and about the 6-foot spacing and the hand washing and everything else. That was all new to us. It added on top of what we already knew, but it's adding additional more work for them to understand, and then explain it to the employees for them to understand it. So that's been a difficulty. Certainly answering the consumer's needs when you don't have the product is a tough one. And then, even the stores, they usually have 1 or 2 suppliers that they're getting the product from. I was in a grocery store just this past weekend, a major supermarket, independent one, who had a fully stocked shelf of meats, vegetables, all of the different things. And when I queried them afterwards about how good their store looked, that I didn't see many empty areas at all, it was because, in addition to his 3 major suppliers of the product, he had backup suppliers that he could get from them.
Oh.
And that's exactly what I did when I had my store when the meat problem happened back in the 70s, is that I had my select ones, but I had 4 of them, and they were all getting asked to do everything. And so I said that what I'll do is I'll take all I need from you for 1 week worth, then I won't bother you for another month.
Yeah.
So I traded with four different wholesalers to get the product.
Yeah.
And so I had product when a lot of us didn't have that.
Yeah.
It's a matter of managing ahead of time, planning for it.
Yeah, sure. When I think about the food supply chain, and we've already talked a little bit about the problem with the meat processing plants being closed, I guess they're now being reopened, is
They
that
are.
right? And,
Yep.
And the big ones particularly. I
Right.
didn't know there were so many, but the big ones that supply, you said 80%. In addition to that, I understand there's a kind of a shortage of truck drivers to drive the trucks to deliver to. Is that a big problem?
It is. That's a huge problem, and that's not only in the grocery industry, but it's all industries, that we just don't have the truck drivers that we used to have for the road, and it's been very problematic. And again,
now, is that again due to the COVID-19,
No,
or is that an underlying problem?
it's an underlying problem. It's expensive to be a truck driver. They have to usually have their own rigs, or they're being subsidizing, the companies subsidizing their rigs for them. But they have to do long hours on the road, and it doesn't pay that much. It's sufficient, but it doesn't pay much for that. And it's a hard road. You're on the road a lot. You're sleeping in your truck at night. You have to abide all the rules by different states. You're going through all different weather conditions. All of those things accumulate and get there. So we've become an industry that's changed a lot. Back in the 70s, we had a month's worth of groceries put in a store, in the back room or the basement of the store, and you only use the wholesaler once a month. But over time, that's come down to just-in-time deliveries.
Yeah.
And it's about every day they're delivering it. We were in a store and they were talking about the seafood they get. They get fresh seafood every day delivered to them from the coast. It's the same for a lot of other products. And so that's the thing, is that today's store, when they build a store, they don't build a big back room. They build a small area to just receive it and then get it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the backup inventory we used to have on hand.
I guess that's an economy-wide phenomenon too, just in time for factories.
Right.
Supplies they need to manufacture whatever they're doing, and with your situation as well. You mentioned that the stores are limiting the number of people that can shop at one time. And are they all doing that? And what's the general guideline?
Yeah, that's a general guideline, about 50 per store for a larger store at one time. It's based on the square footage around the size of the store. So smaller stores, it's a little less number of people getting in the store. But for an average supermarket you see around town, it's probably more like 50 at a time that are in the store. And so what you'll see when you try and go into the store, first of all, there's going to be a long trail to get into it, 6-foot markers every way. You stand in line. And then when you get up to the entry of the store, you're going to see where one has a small calculator or a small walkie-talkie, and they're waiting for someone on the other end, the exit area,
To come out.
to come out. When one goes out, one can go in.
Yeah.
Two comes out, two can go in.
Is that working okay? Are people accepting that?
Yeah, that's really becoming. I'm surprised how well that's better than the one-way aisles. That's still confusing a little bit because you don't always look it down on the floor and see what's in the aisle, but do that.
One thing that's happened here, and I'm sure many other parts of the state too, probably other states too, opening early for senior citizens.
Yeah.
I tried that a couple of times and found it a very positive experience
Yeah.
and really appreciate it. Is that continuing?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and that's very positive all the way through.
Yeah.
They're more apt to be elderly. We want to make sure they have the cleanest store because we clean them overnight.
Yes.
So first thing in the morning, they have the time when they come in. It's clean. They don't have a lot of competition in the store. A lot of
Yeah.
other bodies in the store.
And the store's been restocked overnight.
All restocked.
You may have the best choice
Right.
of the day.
Because if you think about it, if you have the hoarders come in and they're taking all the product, there's nothing by 10 o'clock in the morning for regular customers, let alone the elderly who are there. And so we're trying to balance that out. And it's not just for the elderly, it's also for those who are potentially have a health issue,
Yeah.
Women who are pregnant, those that need the assistance to do that. That's what the time is for.
Well, I really appreciate it. I thought it was a fine innovation. I'm glad to hear it's continuing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, the grocery stores are a main source of supply for the food bank, right?
Has been.
Has been.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and now we know. I mean, there's nothing more distressing than seeing these, cars lined up for blocks and blocks and blocks
Exactly.
for people that need to have that resource available because they've lost their jobs.
Yep.
And not everybody's getting unemployment or the federal checks. Is this still something that the stores are able to sustain with their contributions?
As much as we have it, like if we don't have meat in the store, we can't contribute anything to that. But stores have been very generous over the years. We helped establish the food bank over 30 years ago in Manchester. It's the only one for the whole state of New Hampshire.
Right, the whole state.
Yeah. And that one food bank supplies of over 400 local agencies.
Yeah.
So you have the soup kitchens, you have the orphanages, you have other facilities that are helping out those who are needy and hungry to get the product they need. And grocery stores have always been the advocates for that. We donate a lot of the product they used to get free of charge.
Yeah.
What's happened is that now with the just-in-time deliveries, the reason we had a lot of excess was that before, like I said, we had a month's worth of supplies. We had to try and estimate what's going to happen with the 4th of July 2 or 3 months ahead of time. And so we buy excess inventory and then it rains. And we got all this extra inventory. What do we do with it? Rather than throwing it out, we donate it to the food bank.
Yeah. Oh, we have another call. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the... Whoops. I guess he's gone, Brendan. If he calls back, I'll get him. Eric, sorry I missed your call. If you'd like to... Oh, now you're on. Okay. Eric, is that you? Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Eric. You're on the progress report.
I'm back on.
We're glad to welcome you. Have you got
Hung up on me.
a question or a comment
Hey,
for our
is it-
guest?
Yeah, this is Eric. I got a question for your guest.
Yes.
I read about a year ago online. I forget what the name of the article was, but they said in about 10 years from now, all the stores will be all self-scan. All the operators will be gone. And they said that's the wave of the future. They said some countries are already doing that. Some grocery stores that all the checkout operators are gone, and it's all self-scan. So I was wondering if you could answer that question if you heard any news about that, and I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
Yeah.
We touched on that a little bit, but
We
why
did.
don't you expand on that? As to
Sure.
whether you think that's going to be going to...
Well, I think
fully automatic.
technology's always getting ahead of us a little bit further. I watched a movie the other day that was like 10 or 15 years old, and it never talked anything about cell phones. Everything was you pick up the phone or put it in the mail, and no way of corresponding any different than that. And I think the same thing with everything else is going on is that technology is making it more efficient. People felt empowered if they had doing the self-checkout. And then we found that a lot of them didn't like that idea. They wanted to deal with a real cashier. They wanted to talk about different things or understand their grocery bill better or just have someone do it for them. And so we started seeing that some of them had put in the checkout lanes, and now it's come back and they're not doing that. We think that that's changed a little bit now again with the stay-at-home situation. We're doing more Skyping or Zooming from home for talking to one another.
For sure.
And there's now a talk that a lot of the office buildings maybe just having everybody work out of the house because
Yeah.
you learned how to do that. And certainly I'm doing that as well for our office. We're all working out of our house. So those kind of things are a changing demographic of what we're doing, but I think that there's always been a place for the independent operator to know their customers and give them what they need. And that's kind of a satisfaction of going to the grocery store. And even a lot of the major supermarkets, the store managers know their people very well, and they're trying to accommodate them with the products they have. So I'm not sure that we're going to see the end of that happening. There will be changes out there.
Okay. I notice, certain things that we used to take for granted in the grocery store don't seem to be there anymore, like, fix your own salads, and
Right.
I don't see the bakeries making the bread on the store,
Right.
Sourdough and artisanal
Right.
breads and things like that. Is that sort of thing going to be able to come back,
Oh,
or does
yeah.
that depend on?
Yeah.
It depends on the crisis being over, or what's
Yeah,
going to be the criteria
well,
for getting back those extras?
If you remember at a salad bar, there was always the sneeze guards
Yeah.
up there, and that was helping a little bit. But even that, there's still some opportunity of touching the material of things, and so they wanted to eliminate that. So the first thing we said is that that's a potential dangerous item to have out there for anyone to touch or do anything with, and so let's just eliminate all of that going forward. We have some of the stores are eliminating seafood to order. When you go in, you wanted haddock or swordfish or something, they would cut it to the size you want and wrap it up. They were concerned about even transporting that to the consumer. So now what they do is they bring their crew in, they take care of all the different size packaging that's out there, and they put it out there for you to pick up a package.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get, in some cases, customized work on the products you want. That's just a protection. I was in a small convenience store, and they usually have a small area where you can get a donut or a muffin or something and just grab it out of the case with a wax paper. Now they're all pre-sealed. And that's all the things just to protect everybody a little bit more. But I think the idea of the salad bars are coming back. That was always popular. Everybody enjoyed doing that, and we'll see it again. It'll be there.
Okay, good. Let's see here. I think we talked a bit about this. You're saying that you're finding customer compliance with the requirements is pretty good in most areas.
Yep.
But there's a need for more education on that, I guess. Let me just step away from this, and John, because you've been in this business so long and lived it in different roles. How has the business changed over the years you've seen, and what do you think are going to be the changes coming ahead to this business?
Well, again, I still reminisce over growing up in a grocery store. I knew a family that had the children, and by the time I had the grocery store that I was running it, their children had grown up and they were having children. Mm-hmm. And you get to those relationships, you know those families very well. The neighborhood store was very important to everyone going forward. And usually in a town, the stores are supporting the Little League and the Boys Club and the everything else. So that's important to have.
Yeah, sure it is. Okay. I don't know really what more I can ask you about, but
sure.
But I would like to just get your personal thoughts on. I guess you think things are going pretty well. You're pretty happy with the way the grocery stores are adapting to this. And
I guess I would like to put a shout out too to our elected officials.
Okay.
I think that they've all done a tremendous job in trying to help us all out. Homeland Security has been absolutely phenomenal in how aggressive they are, how focused they are on what they're doing. The governor's coming out with his directives almost every day. And he's now got this task force to bring out the rest of the retailers back into the fold of it. Those are all good things on a local, state level. Our delegation in Congress have done an outstanding job. Just today, I got notice that there's a HEROES legislation that's being proposed to help out the essential workers, which are the employees of a grocery store. We're not the first responders. That's the police and the fire. But the essential workers are those that have to be there to maintain what the consumers need. And we had worked with my counterparts around the country and asked our delegations to try and help us out with that area. To our appreciation, Representative Pappas and Representative Custer both have signed on to this, and if it goes through, it's going to be a major plus for those workers. They're going to get a little bit of appreciation for what they do.
That brings up a good point. We have the governor, with his various emergency orders, many emergency orders, a state of emergency declared, I think on March 15th here in the state of New Hampshire. And we have this CARES Act with this $1.25 billion that's being, assigned to various things. I assume that the grocery industry does not need CARES Act money, or is that not right?
Oh, that's not right. I mean, again, you mentioned putting up plexiglass shields.
Oh, those type
of things are fairly expensive. Getting more hand sanitizer units around the store is an extra cost. Taping the store out is getting another cost for separation.
And so have you had some help from the federal funding to meet those kind of costs?
They're going to be getting into that. They're helping with the payroll end of it, so that's going to be a plus to help out with that. So they're involved in that.
And do you have good access to the governor's committee, GOFER? I can't remember what the
GOFER is it. Yeah, very much so.
The legislative advisory committee and that sort of thing. So you're there, and that's part of what you do in your job is to advocate that you get the resources that your members need. And you've given us some examples of that.
Right.
Payroll protection, is that needed for some of your members too?
It is. Again, many of the smaller stores, you're talking about, there's a large number of employees out there, and any assistance we get helps us do more. We're putting signs up, we're rinsing down the carts, sanitizing them after each use of a cart. Everything in the store is just much more labor intensive than it was before.
Well, I would think with the demand you've got for labor that there wouldn't be people that need payroll protection. I mean, you're making money from selling groceries and people have to eat.
The thing to remember is that, first of all, the grocery industry is one of the slimmest margin net profits of all industries.
Yes, yeah.
We traditionally, and this goes back to the 50 years I know about, work on 1/2 of 1% net profit.
Yeah.
So that's a very slim amount to do the day-to-day work, and that's why you see a lot of stores, unfortunately, don't survive over time, is because they can't afford to upgrade themselves like some of the others can do.
Yeah. With the shutdown of the restaurants all around the state, now there's a big customer base that you've lost, right? Is that right?
No, they actually came to us, and we invited them in to say, if you need to work and you want to work, come to a grocery store. We can usually actually help stock on the shelves. That's been
really?
the biggest thing to do, and help in other areas. So we had quite a few do that, and then, like I said earlier, that in some cases we've said, you've got the commercial grade products that you make restaurant food out of. If you can't sell it in your facility, how about preparing it for us to sell in our stores, so that you supplement we have?
That's happening?
Yeah, that has happened.
Oh, really?
Individual store basis, individual restaurant, if they want to do that, has been open to them to do that. And we have a great partnership with the Restaurant and Lodging Association here in the state, so we work together on that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And that's been a successful program?
It has.
And can you go to a store and find a meal that'd be from your favorite restaurant and be identified as such? You say, I'd like to take that and enjoy that.
Remember, it also took a little bit of government intervention to allow that to happen, because there's 2 different tracks here, and so to do those kind of things, it was some stonewalling to get that through while we went through all the approvals to get that done. But that is happening. And then later on, we found that there's some restaurants that actually said we can do pick up delivery, get a meal and have it all prepared for you and take it home. So that's become popular. Again, it's restaurant food, but you don't eat it at a restaurant. You take it home.
Right.
So that helps.
It helps. It's not the same experience.
Everybody's being innovative these days.
And I know that many of your stores have offered to for customers that don't want to go in the store because they want to really be quarantined and isolate. Many of your stores are offering pickup service. We tried that, or I should say, my wife tried it with one of the major chains here, and every slot was taken up. I mean, you just couldn't get a slot. Everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
Is that sort of thing being addressed, and most of your members still offering to bring the food out to you. You
Yeah.
order online and bring it to your car or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean that it depends on the stores. Some do that, others don't. In hardship cases, they'll do. I think anyone would do that. If you talk to the store manager saying, I'm elderly, I got my children in the car here. Can I order it and have it brought out? But again, that's more labor intensive, where they're doing the shopping in the store for that person. And some of that is that the home delivery is another aspect. You can get taxi or Uber or someone to bring the product to you.
Yeah.
There's curbside pickup. The best thing that if someone really is in a bind and doesn't want to go to the store or can't go to the store, talk to a neighbor, talk to a relative.
Yeah, a lot of people.
They're more than willing to do that.
Yes, they are. We have a neighbor that's very interested in doing that. This has gone by fast, John. It always does. It was a very interesting program.
Great.
And you've provided a lot of great information, and I think we're fortunate that we have such a strong grocery business in the state, and it's well represented.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, folks, I expect to be back here, and I think our guest is going to be Bill Alexis from the Manchester Public Health Department. He was on with us early on this when I was with Lou D'Alessandro, and that was a very good program, and I think we'd like to get an update on what's happening with our city health department. One of only two in the state, Manchester and Nashville, the only ones that have public health departments, and ours is excellent. So I hope you'll be back with us next week for that, on that edition of the Progress Report. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to our callers, and thanks to you, John, for showing up. It was a pleasure.
I enjoyed it.